Phil did a couple of drum tracks when Jerry got back to the States too. What else? There's on guitar it was mainly David Rhodes from Random Hold, and there were bits and pieces from Robert Fripp and Paul Weller and Dave Gregory. Excuse me. Synthesizers were Larry Fast and myself. The percussion, Morris Pert, did some great marimba work on No Self-Control and Normal Life. And sax, Dick Morrissey.
John is not on that.
Sorry, John?
Ellis, what's his name?
No, I didn't. I came across him after I'd done the album.
Oh, I see.
I was looking for someone for the tour. Because David Rhodes was unable to do it because he was doing Random Hold as well.
Oh, that sounds a very interesting variety of people. Did you use Paul Weller and Fripp for certain tracks?
Different tracks, yes. There was one thing that... Paul was actually... I know him a bit from before, but he was working in the next studio at Townhouse. And there's one track which we couldn't get the right guitar feel on at all, and he was able to go straight to it. But Paul is very good. I mean, I think he's watching him play sort of the rhythm stuff is that sort of liquid energy.
And Fripp?
Yeah, he's for a lead guitarist, as it were, lines. I think he's my favorite too. So
production work. Have you done any production work for other people?
Only little bits in the past, and nothing really. I did one single, a comedy record almost, but Charlie Drake is in English.
I know. Yeah.
Right. And that was just an odd song that I had written with Martin Hall.
I know Martin.
Right.
He wrote Salisbury? No.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Yeah. And so we just wanted to use a character voice. And I've done little bits which haven't actually materialized, and then I've done some mixes on my own records. I did.
There was a
mix of DIY on the last album.
There was some talk of the Young Ones in Interview.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, neither of those have made a record. With Interview, I did some tapes, and I think Simon Draper, I think, liked them, but Arnold, forget his second name, but Virgin.
No.
Anyway, he was really the A&R looking after Interview. Didn't like them, thought that because I put some keyboard work in with the band, which he didn't like at all. Curiously enough, on their new album, they've now got, Pete Winfield, but anyway, they've also got Mick Glossop as producer, who's done a good job for them, I think, so it's worked out okay.
But I mean, really, you haven't done sort of any major production?
No, not major stuff at all.
No, except maybe doing a bit for your own stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, on this German album, I had to remix 3 of the tracks and do all the vocals again. So, and I did the production on that.
They're actually all sung in German.
Yeah.
Is it a direct translation?
Fairly close. There were some images which didn't work. The guy who was translating is a guy called Horst Königstein, who's done some work with Udo Lindenberg, and is a film director, and he does this sort of as a hobby, really. But he is, I think, very good, and would explain to me why he thought certain images wouldn't translate well in German, or suggest things that would work with the rhyme. And if I felt that they were wrong for the meaning, then we would change them and work again. So we took a lot of time and effort over it to make sure that it was the right tone.
Now, do you speak German?
Nur ein bisschen.
But I mean, what's
only a little. So
what's the reason for doing that?
Well, it's a variety of reasons, and I think first and foremost, you're very aware sometimes when you play in other countries that people aren't understanding what you're singing about. And if you're spending a lot of time trying to work on ideas and images, and some people, maybe 70% of the people only hear the sound, they don't hear the ideas, then you're not getting through it, you're not communicating. Secondly, I've found that last two tours, I had one song with Me and My Teddy Bear, which is a sort of silly song, but I sang it in French in France and in German in Germany. And the people really appreciated the effort of an English-speaking person, even though it was bad, probably, trying, to come towards them. And you risk making a fool of yourself in their language. And I think they like that gesture. So is that. Thirdly, the language itself. If the country, I think for the Germans, they outside sort of Nina Hagen and Udo Lindenberg, they're not used to hearing much sort of rock being sung in German as against Schlager and all the rest. So, and there's something, because I'm English and I don't understand everything as I sing it along, I approach some of it as sound and play with the words in a way that maybe a natural speaking German wouldn't, and I don't in English. And fourth, which is an obvious thing anyways, is that I take the attitude that once with music I don't compromise at all. I do exactly what I want, even if it's going to be labeled commercial suicide in America. But once I've finished that, I'll try and sell it in whatever way I can, and I think that this may help to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all those things.
Now, the singing part of it in Germany, obviously going to have to rehearse quite a lot.
Yeah, well we've done it, and the album's finished now.
But when you go on
when
tour?
I play on tour, yeah.
Yes.
I won't sing all the songs in German because I won't be
Right.
able to remember them, and I'll start getting confused. I'll
Unless
start
you-
singing German in England, and but I think maybe if I can do 5
mixture.
songs, let's say, in German, then that's good.
Now you've got other countries planned as well, like France. Have you got?
The French, you see, German. I spoke to Phonogram a few territories, and the only country which was a little interested was the Germans. The French aren't interested. I'm quite strong in France now anyway, and so.
Yeah, you only confuse them if you put out an album. Maybe.
Yeah, but I was interested to talk about doing it in Japanese and maybe Spanish or Portuguese. I mean, you see, Japanese I have no understanding at all, so I would be very reliant.
But the phonetics are beautiful.
On the translator, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Maybe. I mean, is this a part of your ambition to?
Yeah, I really want to do it.
I mean, do you want to see the third Peter Gabriel album to be sort of like in 100 different languages?
Not 100.
Like
I'll
on
be doing
lingua
it for the
franca?
rest of my life. But
International languages.
yeah, I mean, for me, in Japan, in South America, I'm nobody, and I think this would help me be a good introduction. And the music is a bit hard. It's difficult music. And if I think the language might bring the lyrics closer to the people, so that it gives the music a chance to be heard.
Oh, that's a good idea. Well, I hope it works out for you.
I do too.
Yeah, sweet. All right. Now, Viva Beat. Did you actually discover Viva Beat or something?
Joanne Russo, who's now become Marina Del Rey, is actually, or was a journalist for a while in Los Angeles, and I got talking to her, and she mentioned she had a band, and she sent me a tape, and there's one song which I liked a lot called Man from China. I actually preferred the demo to what they finished with, and so I played that to Strat, and unfortunately I think in some ways he got carried away and went over and signed them lock, stock and barrel. And I'm not sure they were ready for it. But
so you really brought the
so it was the song really more than the band that I was
uh-huh.
originally trying to interest Charisma in.
Mm-hmm.
But we tried before with Random Hold, and they'd been turned down by Charisma, and
We're going to pull it on.
yeah, although now they've been dropped by Polydor.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another thing. I mean, I was looking around for things for Charisma for a while because I thought they were getting stale. And I introduced Strat to a guy called Dick Jewell, who brought along the Madness tapes about a week after they were formed, and Charisma weren't interested, stupidly. Then just recently, this band called Manicured Noise that he brought along, which I like very much, but I think they now split up. But the main writer there, if he still carries on, I think is very, very strong. They sound a little like Talking Heads at times, but I'm sure that's something they're just going through. And there's another band called The Scars, which Richard, who's another young person, sort of new wave person that was introduced to Charisma, he's discovered.
So you're doing the part of an A&R man as well?
No, but I just wanted Charisma to have just some foot in 1980, not everything in 1970.
Yes. I mean, the record company, the format looks like that now, doesn't it?
Sure.
Very oldish.
Genesis mainly,
Yes.
then me, then
Brand
a bit of,
X.
yeah, a bit of Brand X, whatever.
And that's it, really, because the other bands, yes, you hardly hear about. Were you surprised that Genesis went #1 straight away?
No, I think that they're probably one of the biggest bands in England. If you know, one of the three, maybe Zeppelin, Floyd, and Genesis. So I wasn't surprised at all.
Now I know that the questions. I mean, I've asked you some of the questions about Genesis. Do you ever miss them?
Not really. I mean, I think sometimes I see them once or twice socially, and I would enjoy perhaps sometimes to see them more often. Phil I get on very well with when I see them too.
Phil was saying that, you know, you're probably more closer now than you were before, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. But, I mean, I don't tend to see them that much. So,
because you're busy. They're busy. But you don't really miss them.
No, I mean, not really. I mean, not sort of musical sense. And, you know, it's also been 6 years now, and I've found some really good friends as well as musicians amongst Tony, Larry, and Jerry, and so on. So it's it's good.
Now there was talk also of doing the Lamb.
Yeah, I still hope to do that. I spent quite a long time working on the film script with the director Alexandro Jodorowsky.
The Czechoslovak, is it Czech or
I would get muddled actually.
Doesn't matter.
He's Polish parents, but I think in Argentina he was born.
And who's in the movie and what is the musical?
Well, at the moment, you see, we're stuck a little because we're trying to get the money. I think we budgeted it to $5 million, and the problem is America is 50% of the world's film market, and I've just been dropped by my American label, so it's hard to raise finance if we can't convince the backers that I'm a viable investment, I suppose, in America. So that has to change a bit, I think. So it's wait and see time now. But the script is already Jodorowsky's. Now just started another film, so I wouldn't be able to start anything till October.
Are you actually in the film?
This is one idea. I mean, I'm not sure. To me, it's not I want to be involved in it, more particularly as an apprenticeship to learn about filmmaking. But it's not important to me whether it's acting or behind the camera. In some ways, I think maybe I might be too old for it. and that I'm now 30, and Rael, I think, is more like 20.
Yeah,
So-
the figure, he still remains. Mm.
But I don't know.
It might,
Might still happen.
yeah. But there's also the re-recording of the album, isn't there? So
Yeah, I mean, this is the idea. I think Phil is quite into it, and I'm not sure that Tony is now. You know, so I think they're a little worried that it may be seen as my project, you know, rather than a Genesis project. So they don't want to take a lot of time and energy building my career when they should be building their own. So I don't, which is a fair enough point of view, but the music isn't my music, it's the group music, so I don't quite see it like that. Anyway.
Right, well, let's get on to the album. Now, yes, I with this third album, is it the last in the series now?
Maybe, I haven't really decided. I mean, I was originally thinking it would take 3, I think I may have said last time, to get to a point where I felt that as a writer I had to establish myself.
Now, there was also talk that, well, you said it, that you were going to change onto a different set of music as well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel this music on this album is changing.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, this is a departure from the other ones.
Yeah.
Is that because of the producers, or because...
No, not the producer. It's more the way that I wrote it and approached the arrangement. Steve was involved more in the sort of sounds and the type of sounds, and not really in the arrangements. I think it was more the original sort of idea for changing the music, you know, which was first of all to change the rhythmic structure, and then to build on that with much starker arrangements. So yes, I think it was more from the original idea of the writing and the involvement of the musicians in parts. And then Steve and Hugh both played their roles more on this behind the desk.
Now, okay, I mean, I like the album. I like anything creative, anything weird sounding or anything different. I love it. But from your point of view, I mean, you haven't exactly sold billions of albums. Shouldn't you be looking perhaps for a more commercial sound? I know you've already answered that before. You said you don't care about it, but I mean, logically, I mean, shouldn't you?
No, I would rather try and make my sound commercial than make, if you see what I mean. So first of all, I just work on the thing that sounds right, and then try and sell it, rather than design the music in order to sell, because I think that's a cheap way to do it, and in the long run, it makes for uninteresting music, because you will try and copy something or imitate something that sells a lot of records, which always happens in the music business and the film business. You know that Bee Gees sell a lot of records, so everybody sounds like the Bee Gees. So Sex Pistols sell a lot of records, so everybody sounds like the Sex Pistols. I mean, all the time. And it's not so important to me to be the biggest, you know, sell more records than ABBA or the Beatles or the Pistols, whoever. It's I want to sell as many records as I can, but more important is to make music that interests me and that excites me.
Now, as much as there might be some people in the company, in the record company, who appreciate your music, obviously you must have had a few nasty looks when you first presented the tapes. This is not exactly gonna, you know, go straight into #1 or something like that beat.
No, but you see, the surprising thing was that no one thought that the single was that commercial, and yet that got to #4.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm not quite as pessimistic in terms of sales as I was at one point when the Americans were, you know, dropped it. In Charisma and Phonogram have been enthusiastic about the album. and I haven't had any bad reports from them. It's just been America that has hated it.
Mhm. Now, the other thing is, you once told me that you wanted to market your albums like powder. This is fact why they all have the
Yeah.
same, like
Amazing.
new, yeah, or new, improved, and super improved. Now, does it apply to the music? I mean, do you see the last album?
Yeah, well, it was actually that I didn't want to sell it like soap powder, because
No, you wanted to.
because soap powder, it's always the same stuff,
Yes,
and in different boxes.
but there is a new
this
and the
I think
improved.
I want to make the same box,
Mhm.
but different stuff,
Mhm.
so that it has the same name.
More like a new,
Picture.
improved, and extra improved.
Well, no, not new, not improved at all, just the same old shit.
Uh-huh.
I think it is different, but I don't want to market it like that.
So you don't actually see the last music as a progression on the other ones. Just
I do, yes, but I don't want the marketing
Mhm.
to put that across, really.
Now, how would you say that this music that you're making now, which is obviously a departure from your older stuff, as a progression from the others, when the others were completely different sound altogether?
Well, it's different. I mean, mainly it's for me as a result of this approach of rhythm in the writing, using the rhythm track first. That this is for me a sort of little revolution in my writing, and has provided a lot of new ideas.
Mm. Now, also, like, one can't really say whether this is your favorite music as well.
I think my taste changes as the years go. Now, this is the album that is my favorite music of mine.
People have been making these comparisons to Bowie because that's what he does. He built something up, and that's what you seem to have been doing. He does something, he creates something, creates a style of music, then destroys it. Is that how you work on that same pattern?
Yeah, I don't feel I destroy it altogether. I feel I move through it. I think he's an interesting artist, and it's important that rock should have people on the outside of the mainstream, that are prepared to experiment and risk.
I mean, maybe it's the wrong question, but yeah, how important is it for you to keep on the creativity end of yourself and experimental end? Because first you obviously experiment. I mean, this is more experimental than you go into something. It's like creating. How important is creativity for you in music?
I think it's very important, just to keep exploring, because that way you keep questioning your music. It's very easy. I sometimes find when I'm sitting at the piano that I will want to play something which is in a style which is something that I've finished with in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel, right, well, maybe don't just play the first thing that comes. Think about it and maybe throw that away and try and use some of that feeling or that idea in a new approach.
So
it's often with music that you just hear the final product, but there's often a lot of thought processes that have to grow, then be discarded, grow up and be discarded, and so on, before you get to the end product. That's one of the things with Robert's new band, is that it was early days, and about 70% of it works for me and 30% didn't. But some of it was very original, and I could see that he'd been thinking about the music in a way that no one else has yet thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things in my own music which I like to try and think, right, and this is the way people usually do it. Now, is there maybe a better way or a more interesting way that I could try? which is one of the reasons that I started with the rhythm this time and didn't use any cymbals in the drum kit.
Did you use the lyrics? You said you did the rhythm first and all that. Did you use the lyrics as an instrument?
Sometimes, I mean, I think the sound of the word is very important, and the fact that I was fitting some of the lyrics to the rhythm already meant that they were perhaps more conscious of the rhythm than previous albums.
Now, do you see this as any... okay, you've been known to be, when you were in Genesis, and after that, you were very known to be a very prolific writer, one of Genesis' main core of writers. Do you see that this stuff that you're doing now is prolific writing? In the way...
I think there's quite a... I mean, now, just this last period, there's been quite a lot of it which has come out. There were about 15 songs that we recorded for this album, only 9 of which are sort of coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's done.
Was it important for you? Were the lyrics the least importance you put emphasis on, or was it the music first? I mean, you said that you did the rhythm. Was the lyrics used mainly as a vehicle?
No, I think it's still very important for me, the lyrics, because they really build atmospheres. That's really what I think this album is about: mood and atmospheres, less specific meanings and melodies in some cases.
This is one question that I've never asked. Are you very emotional?
I think I'm sort of repressed emotional in the sort of British tradition. You know, you have all these tight-assed, stiff upper-lipped British tendencies, which I think cause inattention, and so on the surface I think I'm fairly unemotional and numb or cold, but inside I think I do feel things quite a lot. There's quite a lot of tidal flow going on.
Now, is that important? Is it important for you to express emotion in music and lyrics?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's what I enjoy in other people's music, is being able to sort of plug in to the emotion. I was thinking the other day that in some ways I think that this new music is a bit like blues music, and that some of it is sad or creepy, or is more the negative side of it. But sometimes when you listen to blues music, although it's depressing and painful, you actually feel good, because you are, I don't know if it's sharing that emotion or
it hits you in your heart straight away.
Yeah. Soul music, if you like.
Soul.
White man.
That's
soul.
right. That's right.
That's what I'd like to make.
You see, the impression I got is, except maybe for Biko and maybe another tune, I felt that the was very abstract. And
some of it is quite abstract. Yeah.
Yes, but I couldn't see how emotion gets in there.
Oh,
maybe in your
there's a lot of
singing.
it. Yeah, and trying to leave things so that people can still put their own pictures on them. It's like a sort of a colouring frame, that you fill in your own colours really sometimes.
How do you, I mean, this is one thing which I'm intrigued. I heard somebody on the radio the other day saying, how does Peter Gabriel compose this music?
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was playing this and say, how does he compose it? I mean, how did you compose this? Definitely not just on the piano.
It starts off with, as I said, mainly the drum machine, then the piano, probably then synthesizers, then voice actually from the word go probably, and then I'll try other arrangements. So we're building it up in layers, and sometimes we would build up a whole arrangement and then in the studio decide to scrap a lot of instruments. For instance, on Normal Life, there's some loud sections. I mean, there are about 15 tracks of music going on. There's a lot of those, and you only hear about 2 or 3 of them, and the rest we just wiped out. So you have a certain amount of creative arrangement going on at the mixing stage.
So is that probably why you spent a lot of time in the studio?
Partly.
Hmm.
It wasn't a huge amount of time. I mean, I think it was like sort of 2 months of solid work, but spread over a 6 months period or so.
Mm-hmm. Now, where did you draw this new influence from?
I'd say probably a lot of things really, and I think some of it is what is going on anyway, some of the modern stuff, but the other half of that is this more sort of primitive tribal rhythmic feel, which is
Yes, very African at
yeah.
times. I felt.
Yeah, Biko is a real African rhythm. It's based on.
Well, even those what are they called? The wood.
The marimba.
Marimbas, yeah, marimbas. The use of the marimbas is.
Yeah, that there's one track which is now the new single, which was directly influenced by Steve Reich. There's an album. He has music for 18 musicians, and he uses marimba and voice there. And I liked the textures very much, and I wanted to try and use those textures in a rock format. That was a case of a direct influence, of which I'm aware of and I can see. But normally, you know, my influences are more vague than that, and it's just generally what I do things for my taste rather than
for the people's.
Yeah.
Commercial use.
Yeah.
Is it a danger that your music becomes too structured? Too difficult?
I don't think. Well, I'm hoping not. I mean, I think one of the advantages of keeping the rhythm constant is that your body can lock into it. So I'm hoping, you know, that even though I make changes sometimes with the sound and the melody and the things on top, the rhythm will be constant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really feel part of revolution as such. You know, I think I'm outside of the main area, and I just sort of keep on working at my own pace in my own area, really. So it's a sort of gradual thing rather than, you know, in terms of the sort of old wave and new wave. I don't really belong to either.
Who acts as a catalyst for your music? Is there a catalyst for you? Somebody who goes, I mean, is it the producer or is it somebody else?
Not so.
Or yourself?
Not so much the
your alter ego.
I mean, I do a lot of it. I mean, although once the musicians come, I bounce a lot of ideas off them. You know, so this time it would be Jerry and Larry and John. You know, so that's the first stage, and then the producer maybe a little bit after that. But I think sometimes it would be useful for me to have someone to bounce off in the writing stage as well. But as yet, I haven't really used.
Your missus doesn't get involved.
She used to sometimes, but now I've moved all my musical instruments out of the cottage, which is very small, and I have a rehearsal room up the road, so she doesn't. I still play her things when I get excited about them, and yes, her reaction. She doesn't always like the difficult things. I think, you know, the taste is more mainstream taste in some ways.
Radio stuff.
Yeah, although just recently she's got. We have a friend who makes up tapes of new wave stuff, obscure bands from rough trade, and from the record shop rather than the label itself. But and then he doesn't tell me who they are or tell her. We just listen to these things and decide what we like and don't like, and then ask who they are.
It's going to be the Beatles. Yes.
But it's a good way of doing it because you don't have any preconceived notions. You know, sometimes you read about people in the music press.
Sure. You can get biased.
And you have an idea, oh, well, they sound like that, or they say this in the press, and they look like this, and so on. But when you just hear the music, you just have to judge it on that alone, and that's good. But anyway, he's sort of educated us a bit on a lot of new things, and so her taste and mine have been influenced there a bit. So, yeah, but since I've moved my rehearsal room, she doesn't hear as much. So.
Do you ever put yourself in the picture of when you're writing something about something? Do you put yourself? I mean, like say, Biko obviously is very straightforward about him, but do you also place yourself, say, in his position or something like that? And
I don't know. I mean, I found myself identifying with him quite strongly, and then I think he seemed very able and articulate, intelligent youth leader. I mean, maybe he could have been a world youth leader rather than just a black African. And I was really shocked when I heard, one breakfast time that he'd been killed. And normally, I'm not a political person. I don't think so. But it was just something that I did want to write about. And,
you felt very strong about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 years, 3 years now, so some time ago, but I wrote it down in my book as something to write about, and then when I started getting into the rhythms, and it just seemed like an appropriate.
I mean, you're not now going to write something about Iran or Afghanistan.
No, I don't think so. I mean, if I get moved to do it, then I may do so, but I don't look upon myself as a political commentator. I think that's more the exception than the rule.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, yes, is there a link between the 3 albums, besides obviously you and your music? Is there any special connection between them that one should see or relate to each other?
Not really, and I think I mentioned to you before that there is one story called Mozart, which there are certain songs which will maybe relate. I mean, they do relate, but maybe if I ever do the story, then those songs will fit into it. But it's not important in the sense that the songs should stand up separately.
Mm-hmm. Let's take one song. Let's just pick one song at random. Okay, let's take Family Snapshot. Now there you've it seemed like it was going to start as a family snapshot. Somebody's going to take pictures, but then it went so really abstract again. Like, are you talking about cameras or what are you talking about? Because I can't. I mean, you can translate it into any way. Like as you said, you put it. It's like a flower thing. You see it as.
Yeah, although that one I think is quite specific. It's about the assassination attempt. There was a book called An Assassin's Diary by Arthur Bremer, who tried to assassinate Richard Nixon, and then
there's an Nixon song, right?
Governor Wallace.
Because I was going to ask you about it.
Right, and so you got some references to that, and also to the Kennedy assassination. And in this diary that he wrote, you have some idea of his mental makeup, and it's in a sense one can understand what it is that drives him. And I basically had the idea that in his childhood he began a pattern which he repeated by trying to assassinate this father figure in the world in adult life. So you have the last verses are he's remembering as a child playing with his toy gun, and the first part is of his attempt to assassinate.
You seem to be drawing more influences from books.
Some of them are, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any rules as to where the ideas are going to come from. It's just if it seems good, then I'll use it.
Now, the first impression when I first heard your first solo album, of course, it was the only time that I could really say this is your genuine work rather than a Genesis corporate
Yeah.
effort. I didn't notice any negativity or any cynicism in your music. Are you now becoming a bit more negative and perhaps a little bit cynical at things?
In some ways, but I mean, I think that the negativeness is that there's hope there. And that's what I was mentioning the blues, because even though the subject matter is always depressing, there is still a good feeling from it, a hopeful feeling.
Mm-hmm. So you'd like to maybe explore in that field further?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. So what are we going to expect anyway from you next time?
I don't know. I mean, well, in fact, I do know a bit, because there's certain songs I don't. Did you see the show at all this time?
Oh yes.
There's one called Milgram's 37,
Mm-hmm.
and one called I Go Swimming,
Mm-hmm.
which will be on the album.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hymn which is called To Come My Way, and it's positive, which I think will be on it. Another one called In the Twilight Zone.
Mm-hmm.
And these are half recorded already, so I hope to get the other album out in, well, before Christmas.
Is that a promise?
Not a promise, no. I'd be very rash to do that.
What did you call the store?
Which?
You dubbed the store. You had a name for it. Chinese something or?
Oh, right. China 1984.
Why?
Because a lot of bands that want to outdo each other in terms of tours and T-shirts. You know, you sort of Japanese and the Russian T-shirts.
And you're one of them.
Yeah, so I thought I'd take the piss out of it, and China 1984 I thought sounded better than Russia 1980 or.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a silly joke, and also we had the idea of the parody of a little red book.
You don't want to manufacture your albums as some powder or something like that. You don't like a uniform standing, usual thing. You don't like, you like something different every time.
Oh. No, I like some of it the same. I mean, you see, like, the title is the same, and the look of the album should be the same. It's just a different picture each time.
Does that relate to the uniform you're wearing on the stage? Because that is a uniform.
Yeah. I mean, not really. I just think it looks stronger if there is some sort of unity amongst the way people look on stage. If traditionally, in a rock band, everybody's trying to be an individual, and yet you're playing music which is supposed to be playing together. So I'd like it to look as if there's some sort of coherence to everything.
Do you keep your image and separate from the music? Do you try and keep it separate and what you create on stage, or I mean,
I think it does become different, and I don't try and stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are two different worlds, and it's silly to try and reproduce the records all the time on stage, or limit the record, by what you can do on stage.
Mm-hmm. Now let's take something about this. I mean, this is, as you said, is more of a parody. You did this. Don't you want to make it to China?
Oh, I would like to. Yes, I'd love to go.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything in this that might offend the Chinese?
Yeah, it might. The whole thing might offend the Chinese, I think.
Mm. Isn't that risky?
Although, except Mao is not so in favour now, so
Mm-hmm.
to laugh at a little bit. I mean, I'm not really taking a piss out of the book itself, but it's a convenient style, and I like some of the images in it. It's entertaining. I like the idea of small, self-sufficient communities. I think it's hard to get emotionally concerned about a nation or the world as a whole it's easier to get concerned about 100 people that live around you. And I think people would tend more to put their energy and be happier to put their money and taxes towards the people that live around them than they would just to a country as a whole or the continent as a whole.
Seems to be very interesting ideas you have in mind. Do you think you are straining your brain a little bit these days in the way of creativity?
No, not really. I mean, I don't consider myself an intellectual. You know, I know a lot of people that are, I think, more intelligent than I am.
Yeah, but you do tend to underrate yourself a little bit.
Well, I don't. No, I mean, it's just that I still obviously think things through for myself, and I've come to some beliefs.
You're not afraid that maybe because you're being so creative now, you're gonna find a dry patch coming up?
Yeah, maybe if I dry up, then tough. But I mean, if I can get interested in visual things too, then that is good for me, because then it's a whole new area, and if I can work in visual format, I think then I can move it around. So if I dry up musically, I can move to visuals, and if I dry up visually, then I can
There was
do more with the musical side.
yes. If how important this is the last question. How important is your career to you?
It's not as important as it was. That's one of the things I think about. I'm a father now. I have 2 little girls, so I think this puts it in perspective. If I don't want to fuck up their lives by trying to get mine
So how you
as big as possible. So in other words, I don't want to tour for more than 3 months of a year, for instance. So in one sense, that's harmful to my career. Well, it's not good for my career, but it's definitely good for me as a person. When I left school at 17, I'm now 13 years, I have not thought about Mondays to Fridays, 9 to 5, weekends, you know, because you live outside of that. And now I've got a little girl going to school, and suddenly she goes to school, you know, 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, has weekends off. And so my life to fit in with hers then has to try and take account of that. So by becoming a father, I become sucked back into the system a little bit.
So long as you don't become soppy like McCartney, I think it's okay.
Yeah.